From the studios of Warren Tech North, this is Building Bright Futures, a Jeffco podcast with Jeffco Superintendent Dan McMinimee.
Thanks for joining us for our latest podcast. I'm Dan McMinimee. Today we're going to spend some time looking at how our school district tries to help homeless students in Jefferson County schools through the work of Jeffco's Community and Family Connections Department. Their mission is to connect these students and their families with resources. My guests today are Jennifer Wilson, District Coordinator for the department, and Susan Domboski, the Family Engagement Liaison at Golden's Pleasant View Elementary School. Welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks.
Let's first define homelessness as it relates to these students. It can really come in many different forms, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the work of our department is informed by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, and the act defines homelessness as not having fixed, regular, or adequate housing. So for our students, like you said, that takes many forms, unfortunately. Some example scenarios might be families staying in motels or hotels, families who are doubled up with other family members or friends due to financial hardship. They could be staying in emergency shelters, in transitional housing programs. Unfortunately, we have families who are sleeping in their car, in RVs, camping, sleeping outside. I mean, it just takes so many forms.
Sounds like a lot of different difficult circumstances for our kids. How do you go about identifying these students?
So I can speak to that a little bit as a family engagement liaison. I think the biggest role that I can play is creating trusting relationships with families, and I think it's through that trust that families begin to open up a little bit about some of these really difficult circumstances. A lot of times, families are hesitant to divulge these embarrassing sometimes circumstances that they're in. And I think it's because they have fear. They're afraid that we will think of them, less of a parent or less of a provider for their family. And a lot of times it's just through conversations. Sometimes we'll hear things, children will say things to a classroom teacher that might raise a little bit of a red flag. And because we've been able to have relationships built with parents, it makes that conversation that much easier just to be that check-in and let them know that we care about them and their kids, and B, to let them know that the district does have supports in place.
So it's really about some training for our staff to make sure that they're kind of understanding the key signs or being very perceptive and being good listeners to kind of pull those clues out so that we can help these families when they're in need.
Right. A lot of our referrals come from different school staff, so that could be the enrollment secretary, the principals, the counselors, social workers, psychologists. Our referrals, we definitely get a lot of referrals from our family engagement liaisons who work directly with our families, and sometimes our students or parents or guardians, they self-refer. They identify the situation they're in, and they're just in search of resources to support them during that time. So we identify our families all different ways.
Can you talk to me about the need in Jeffco? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse let's just take the past year.
Yes, I would say that the situation, unfortunately, as far as we're seeing, has gotten worse, not only in Jeffco, but across the entire state. Right. Last year, the district identified nearly 2,800 students who were in a homeless or an unaccompanied situation. And that number is, I think about the number that the district identified 15 years ago, and it was less than 100. And so I think the reason for that is sort of twofold. One, I think that everyone can kind of agree that the housing environment is especially difficult right now. And we have a lot of folks who are moving into Denver, moving to Colorado, who maybe don't have their housing situation worked out. And then I think the other piece of that is that I think our team has gotten better at identifying families, making sure that students and families know their educational rights per the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, and that are district staff are educated, like you said, on the rights of these students and the services available to them at the district.
So in a way, even as it's gotten more challenging, the positive is that we have a team of people that really recognize and act upon the information that they're getting in our neighborhoods. And so that may be the silver lining in this situation, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think, and I would echo what Jennifer said in regard to, I just think things seem so precarious right now for families in this housing market.
Right.
And families who, even a few months ago were doing really well in a place, had been there for years. All it takes is one homeowner, one landlord to raise the rent, to sell the property, and then boom, they're really faced trying to find housing where now the rents have gone through the
Right. So I know I saw a report yesterday from the Jeffco Economic Development Council that said that the employability has actually dropped. That number has. We have more people having jobs now, but I think it's the type of jobs they have and the type of wages they have, and that cost is not outstripping the cost of housing in Jeffco. I think that's what we've seen.
Exactly. I think that's a huge misconception that people have, is that the families that we're working with who are experiencing homelessness are not actively seeking employment, are not
Right.
making any type of income. And I think the reality is that so many of the families we work with are actively employed, full-time employed.
They're doing everything right.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and they still find themselves in a situation that a lot of times once they get to a point where housing has become a challenge for them, or they lose their housing for whatever reason, it's just that much more difficult to get out of that because of the situation of the market right now.
Right. So Jennifer, let's focus in on your role as district coordinator. What are your priorities?
Sure. So per the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, every single district in the country is required to have a McKinney-Vento liaison designated for their district, and that person is responsible for upholding and protecting the educational rights of the students who are in unaccompanied or homeless situations. And so I would say that as the district liaison, I feel that really my top priority is just to make sure that those rights are protected, that district staff are educated and informed about those rights, and that students are really experiencing no barrier to full participation in school and to an adequate education just like their peers. And so that is really a top priority. I would say the second piece would be just really making sure that the community supports us in this work. And I think that that's another silver lining of the work, is that so many people, they care so much about their community. They're absolutely heartbroken to hear about these students and families and what they're experiencing, rightly so. And so just making sure that all the resources that are available to our students are reaching our students, and that our team and Susan's team, that they know about what's available, and that they're making that warm and quick connection.
So I'm guessing you've created some connections with, say, the Arvada Food Bank and the Action Center and all those great organizations in our community that are there to help our community.
Absolutely. The food resources, the shelter resources, clothing resources, and so many others. I think that in our work, you have to become familiar with that really, really quickly changing landscape.
Right.
And I really firmly believe that the better relationships we have with those organizations, the better service and supports our families ultimately get. If we can call up someone who we know and trust, and we can create that direct path right to the resources for our families, the outcome will be that much better.
Right.
Yeah.
Susan, talk about your position as a family engagement liaison at Pleasant View Elementary. What work does that work entail?
Well, I'll start by first of all saying that last year the district was able to provide full-time family engagement liaisons in all of the Title I schools, and I'm so honored to be part of this great team. And we work on the PTA national standards. There's 6 of them. Creating a welcoming environment, effective two-way communication, speaking up for every child, supporting the student success for all students, shared power, and collaborating with community. And so those are kind of our guiding guiding framework for the work that we do. So at Pleasant View, it takes all different shapes, and every day I'm reaching families at all these different levels. And I think creating certainly that welcoming environment, and also building the relationship not just with the parent but with the student and the parent, and creating opportunities for parents to build relationships with each other to kind of just really strengthen that community. And it's really to benefit, the ultimate is to benefit the academic success of their kids.
It sounds like a really rewarding and challenging job all in the same time.
It is. And I think that, we view the student as more than just the student. They come with this package of a family, and, we're certainly not going to be able to move a student academically if we don't also address them kind of as a whole unit. And so if the family is struggling with housing or in need of other resources, if we can't find ways to support that, we're never just going to be able to just address with the student. We really have to work as a team.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life, young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Jennifer Wilson, District Coordinator for Jeffco's Community and Family Connections Department, and Susan Domboski, the Family Engagement Liaison at Golden's Pleasant View Elementary, both of whom help with Jeffco's homeless student population. Jennifer, can you paint an overall picture about how Jeffco Public Schools is able to serve and support these students and their families?
Absolutely. So we're very fortunate to have a very resourced and supported program for our families and our students who are experiencing these situations. So for starters, because of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which I know I've referenced quite a few times, but for starters, we're here to promote their right to immediate enrollment. So I think all of those documents, the paperwork that are typically needed, if a student is in a homeless or unaccompanied situation, they really might not have easy access to those things. And so we want to get them in school, enrolled, and part of a supportive community and environment right away. We're also able to sort of advocate for any additional barriers that might get in the way of them experiencing full participation, which might be transportation, additional fees. We'll immediately enroll them in free lunch. Another great thing about our program is that the McKinney-Vento work we do is matched and partnered by the fact that we're a medical assistance site, so we're able to do Medicaid and CHP Plus applications. So if we find that a family or a student is without insurance and that medical coverage that's so important, we're able to do an application and get them enrolled right away. And then we just assist with additional pieces like food, school supplies, hygiene items. We're able to do credit recovery assistance, so that would be night school, summer school, things that get them to graduation. We're able to assist with their financial aid, the FAFSA letter. If you're an unaccompanied student and you don't really have a parent or guardian who's supporting you in that process, we're able to craft a letter that says that the student doesn't really have that parental figure in their life, and so it waives the need for that so that they can really continue to move forward with financial aid for college and university. And so yeah, our work is, we really take it as a case-by-case basis, what a student needs to succeed at the moment, and then we continue to be there available for them as their situation changes, because it really does.
All right, so it sounds like you personalize the response to what the student needs, and you just have a lot of tools in your belt that you can use to address their concerns.
We try to, and whatever we're not able to do in-house, that's when we make that warm referral to all of the incredible agencies and community partners who are doing the rest of the great work.
Great. Susan, you mentioned this before, but I'd imagine building relationships and trust is key. How do you go about doing that with these folks?
So I'll give an example of something I think that's been really effective. Last couple of years, I team with our principal, Janice Fisher, and do family interviews for all of our incoming kindergarten and any new family that's coming to Pleasant View. And we offer to do that at their home if that's convenient, or they come into school for the meeting. And it's really an opportunity for us to sit down and we just ask a series of questions that gives us a little bit of insight to the family, to the student as an individual. And we ask questions, for example, we might ask how the family themselves, what their educational experience was like. That can give us an indicator of maybe their sense of comfort when they're coming into a school or when they're talking to an administrator or teacher. And then it also gives us an opportunity to find out a little bit about their situation, where they're living, where they're staying, who lives with them. And I think that that sitting down with those face-to-face conversations, and sometimes in the comfort of their own home, is really that first step of feeling like they belong to this school community, and it gives them an opportunity to ask us questions. And then I can follow up if, for example, let's say it's a single mom. She's had to move in with her parents because of financial hardship. That qualifies under McKinney-Vento as being in a homeless situation. Now, that family might not have any thought that they would qualify for additional supports, because in their mind they're thinking, I'm in a house, there's a roof over my head, but because they're in that situation directly due to financial hardship, that single mom could not live on her own, that puts them into this category, which will then put all of the supports that Jennifer talked about into place. So it's building those opening windows, I would say, to allow families to reach out to us as well. And I think building the relationships with the folks at the Community Family Connections, our liaisons in the district, and being able to go to Jennifer and ask questions and ask for support, or give a circumstance, I have this family and here's what they're going through, how can we help, and what can you do at the district, and for us to work together to really support families.
Yeah, it's a daunting task, it sounds like, at times, because you really can't even imagine some of the circumstances that our kids and families live in, and the students still expected to arrive at school ready to go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, I think it takes such an incredible amount of energy for a family to hold it together during these really difficult times, and I really admire families who can do that and try and create some sense of normalcy and some sense of stability, even if they are living in their camper or in a hotel, and to be able to get their kids to school on time and have some type of regular homework routine, and those parents are just holding it together for their kids. It's really pretty inspiring.
Yeah, and if I may, I completely agree, and I think that so often when we think about our students and families who are in these homeless situations, unaccompanied situations, so often we have a tendency to kind of consider it from a deficit perspective, all of the things they don't have, all of the struggles, all of the barriers. And I think it's reasonable to consider all those things, but in reality, I think our work is at its best when we acknowledge all of the strengths that the students and families bring. And I think, just like Susan said, it is incredibly courageous to step forward and ask for assistance and to share your very, very personal story with somebody. And so every time a student or their parent or guardian does, it's just, I think the work has to be approached with humility, that it's a gift that they would even share it with us and that we get to walk alongside with them.
That leads to my final question. While respecting privacy, would each one of you share with me a success story, something you're really proud that has happened in the last year and a half for someone that you've worked with?
Yeah, I can, of course, can think of a lot of them, but one that stands out to me, a family, a longtime family who'd been at our school, 3 kids. Mom was working, dad was working, and they were one of those situations where their home that they'd been renting had been sold out from under them, and there they were trying to break into this market at a price level they just was not accessible. They had stayed a few nights in their car, and it took them, even with all of the relationships we had built, it had taken them a little bit of time to come and ask for some help. We were able to get them into a hotel, and then eventually they were able to get on their feet. Mom got a promotion at her place of employment, and they were able to find an apartment. But I think the other thing is this, all of this kind of transpired towards the end of the school year. And so what was, I think, so wonderful is that, when the last day of school ends, that doesn't mean like, okay, best of luck. We were able to continue to support that family, and they allowed us to do that, even after that last school bell rang.
Great story. Thank you for sharing. Jennifer?
Yeah, Susan does such incredible work with our families. I mean, really, really just sees the best and brightest in them. So one family comes to mind. They moved to Colorado from out of state, had never been to Colorado before. They weren't familiar with the resources, and they were fleeing a violent situation. And so they show up at one of our emergency shelters in the area. The emergency shelter, knowing about our services through the schools, immediately contacts us, notifies us that they have this family and this elementary school student who wasn't yet enrolled anywhere. So we look at where the shelter is located and the closest elementary school. We call the school and we say we've got a family who's been identified as McKinney-Vento in a homeless situation, and the school says send them right over. We know what to do. They rolled out the red carpet. They brought mom in. They enrolled the student right away. They gave her a really, really warm welcome, a tour of the school, and all the things he needed for school supplies. And then we suited them up with all the other things they needed, those different services and supports I had listed. And then we heard from through a community contact that an apartment was opening up. And so we put mom in contact with the apartment. And this, the managing company, they really, really wanted to work with our family specifically. And so they did everything they could to bring her in, and she needed first month's rent and deposit. So we contacted Jeffco Human Services. They have something there called the diversion program, and it's a fund for this type of situation. And so Human Services was able to do first month's rent and deposit and get mom and family immediately into the apartment. The apartment was willing to wait it out for all of that to happen, because it all takes time. And then once they get into the apartment, they don't have any furniture. So we reached out to yet another community contact, and they just rallied together, and the family didn't have moving trucks or money to do that, and so the community members one weekend go out and deliver all this furniture, assemble beds, and come Monday morning I have these 2 messages on my voicemail, one from the community member saying what an incredible family, what a joy it was, and the other from the family saying thank you so much, they were so wonderful. And now this mom is in touch with the family engagement liaison, just like Susan at this elementary school, in order to bring some of her gifts and talents back to the school. And so I think that is an example of our work at its best.
It's a great story. And I think people don't realize the work that we do outside the classroom to support families, and you should both be congratulated. Excellent work. Really appreciate
thank you.
it.
Thank you. We feel very supported in our work, so thank you.
Great. Thanks to both of you for helping us understand the vital work that you continue to do for these students and their families. That's going to do it for this edition of Building Bright Futures. As always, we want to thank the digital audio staff and engineers of wonderful Warren Tech North for their production assistance. Have a podcast topic you'd like me to consider? Love to hear from you. Until next time.
This has been Building Bright Futures, a Jeffco podcast with Jeffco Superintendent Dan McMinimee. This is a production of Jeffco Public Schools.